Good morning, welcome back to another Coast Explorers, and we are in Killarney, Queensland. Now when I asked my Aussie friends where Killarney, Queensland was, they had no idea, but we are right on the border of New South Wales and Queensland, about 2 hours west of Brisbane. I'm here visiting a relative of mine, and I've decided to take a bit of a historical walking tour around the town to find out more about the settlement here in Killarney. So let's get going. It was 1788 when the British first arrived here in Australia, but it wasn't until the 1840s when the Darling Downs here started to be settled. It took a while to get over the Great Dividing Range to find a route through. When the British did, they settled here, became a timber area, then dairy farms started cropping up. We've still got lots and lots of cows here today. They made butter. There was even a butter factory in Killarney town. A roaring business until the British started buying their butter from Denmark and other places in Europe. A great place to start exploring Killarney is at the Heritage Centre, which is open on Saturdays and Sundays from 10 till 2. Check it out to find out more about the local history and to talk with locals. Looks as though there is a golf course here as well at Killarney. We're standing on the third tee here. Beautiful views across the downs. The fairway is nicely mown, should I say, and there's a flag on the green at the other end. So if you've ever played golf here at Killarney, let me know in the comments below. Now a tip when YouTubing is speak to the local people. I've just bumped into a Mr. Cooper who said this was set up in 1854 by the locals here. It's in a bit of state of disrepair because all the old chaps and ladies don't play golf anymore, but you can get down here. If you can get down here on Sunday, there is another golf day. Apparently built as a links course, and you can see that when you look out. You could be in Scotland or somewhere like that, with rough either side of quite a narrow fairway. If you're in Queensland, bring your clubs, get yourself down to Killarney Golf Course. It's the local sports complex. We've got a beautiful muscular statue of an Adonis behind me, and then we've got some tennis courts, we've got a skateboard park, we've got some rugby pitches here, and then just behind there we've got a very special kind of oval. Let's go and see what game is played there. Now this is the game of polo cross. Never heard of it, right? What do you think it's a cross between? Have a little think and let's find out more about the sport of polo cross. Polo cross is a team sport that combines elements of polo and lacrosse. It's played on a rectangular field with 2 teams of 3 players each. The objective is to score points by throwing and catching a small rubber ball through the opposing team's goal. Polo cross is a fast-paced, highly skilled sport that requires coordination between the player and their horse, as well as strategic passing, ball handling and shooting abilities. Although it's played all over the world, Australia, South Africa, New Zealand and Zimbabwe are considered the primary polo cross powerhouses, with well-established national and international level competitions. Here we are at the New South Wales border with Queensland. Now this has got an interesting tale, so let's find out more about this hard border that's always been here since 1859. Where we are in Queensland today was once the colony of New South Wales. Prior to the official proclamation of Queensland's borders in 1859, a number of interesting suggestions were put forward concerning borders. In 1838, a map was proposed by Captain James Vetch of the Royal Geographical Society. By 1838, the coastline of the Australian continent had been well defined by mariners such as James Cook, Matthew Flinders and Philip Parker King. Vetch tried to give each colony equal areas, possess a tract of seacoast with possible harbour sites and be as compact as possible. This did not come to fruition, and there were further proposals in 1846 and 1851 before the map changed somewhat to what we recognise it today. In 1859, Queen Victoria signed the letters patent that formally established the colony of Queensland, separating it from New South Wales. There have been multiple surveys and changes made to the border between the two states since then, right up until recent years. At the border is the infamous rabbit-proof fence. The history of the barrier fence is linked to the northward invasion of rabbits in the 1880s. Domestic rabbits were first brought to Australia with the first fleet, and wild rabbits were released into Victoria in 1859. The rabbit population spread rapidly at rates of up to 100 kilometres a year. Rabbits were first reported in southwestern Queensland in the 1880s. In 1893, a rabbit-proof fence was commenced in Queensland. It was progressively extended through the years, and in 1997, a final segment was built connecting it to the dingo fence in the north, keeping out the wild dogs. To my knowledge, there's been a hard border between the two states twice in their history. Once in 1919, when there was an influenza epidemic in Australia, and people had to quarantine at the border in camps, and the other in recent times during COVID, when travelling between the states was heavily restricted. Movement of plant products into and out of the areas within Queensland is regulated, but I'm not sure how heavily enforced it actually is. The whole of the state is a biosecurity zone for bananas, grape plants, mangoes and sugarcane, and you are prohibited from taking any plants, soil or items that have been in contact with these plants into Queensland. Now this park here in the centre of Killarney is named after George Canning. A lot of things around this area, particularly in Warwick just down the road, named after George Canning. He was Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in 1827. Now he only was Prime Minister for 119 days. He's the second shortest tenure of a Prime Minister we've had. Can you guess who the shortest is? Liz Truss, 49 days. So there we go, Canning Park, right here in the middle of Killarney. All over Killarney you see these wonderful murals. I was asking in the Heritage Centre, no one really knows who first started them, but they're all over the town, so let's take a look at a few. Willow Street here, which is like the main street here in Killarney, and seen lots of different industries and shops over the years. So let's take a look back, trip down memory lane to find out what sort of industries and shops were here on the main street. Now you're probably thinking, who is Killarney's most favourite son or daughter? Well, Their most famous child is a man called John Jackie Howe, who, way back when, he sheared 321 sheep in 7 hours 20 minutes. Hand sheared as well. His dad was actually Australia's first circus acrobat clown, touring the country in Le Rosier's circus. He moved here in 1848. So if you're around Australia and you see a clown, it all started here in Killarney. Now, as I've said before, my dad raised me as a bit of a train spotter, and so one of the first things I checked to see was whether Killarney had a railway, and it did. Opened in 1885. It was sort of a branch line from Warwick, which is 32 kilometres away, but this snaked around all the farms, timber yards, and is about 44 kilometres. Now this lasted up until 1964, and this is Tanny Murals here, the next village down, and there's a beautiful mural on the side of the warehouse where the station once stood. You can see it would have been on this flat piece of land. The railway would have come through and then headed down to Warwick. Now that railway lasted until 1964, but it did go all the way to Mount Colliery as well, and another branch line which brought coal from the mine there to Warwick to be distributed all around. There's tales of school children throughout the villages as well that would get on the train and make their way to and from Warwick each day for school. Outside the trading post here, we've got pumpkins for sale. Pumpkins are everywhere, it seems, in Killarney, as well as cabbages. Back in the day, large amounts of cabbages were sold here as well and sent off all around Queensland and New South Wales. Okay, final bit for today. We're going to head into the hills, up into the gorge, and try and find a geographical feature that brings people flocking from miles around to see it, some even from Hong Kong. To finish off our Killarney adventure, we've come down to the Queen Mary Falls here, about 10 kilometres outside of Killarney. Probably named after Queen Mary of Teck, who was the Queen Elizabeth's grandmother, the wife of King George V. So let's walk down this path and check out the falls to finish up. Tragic event that happened in Killarney's history is the tornado of 1968. Destroyed around 200 houses and killed a little girl. Luckily, most of the children in the village were actually in the theatre practicing some songs, so they all survived, although the roof was taken off. But it's still very much memorialised here, and there is a memorial in the centre of the town to the little girl who died. We've got some lorikeets and some galahs here at the Queen Mary Falls Cafe. Now, when do you think the Australian accent came into being? Well, the British first arrived here in 1788, and it's thought by the 1820s the children of the people in Sydney from England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, London, Cockneys, they were all mixed in together, and that's when it was first noticeably being heard, the Australian accent that we know it today. So there you go, 1820s. Took about 30-40 years before the Australian accent started to develop. Right, well there we go. That was Killarney, Queensland. Thanks for joining me today on this beautiful sunny yet chilly day here in southern Queensland. Hope you've enjoyed looking around the town, and if you get a chance, get yourself out here to the Darling Downs. Right, that's it for now, and we'll catch you on the next one.